In this installment of making circular designs with Adobe Illustrator, I'm going to do a bit of a review and then just talk about some of the things we can do with our circular designs. Alright, so let's quickly take a look at this. So this is just to show how you can build up designs with different techniques. So here we got this path right here. You can see that it's got a fill with a hard light blending mode on it, and it's got a stroke on the outside that's aligned to the outside. I can tell that by right here, see? So a line stroked outside, and it's got this saying gradient in it, and then we got these little stars that are radiating around. We have this circle right here that just has a roughen effect on it. We've got these little kite shapes that have inner glows on them. Inside we got some paths that have been rotated around. What's going on with those stars? They got some sort of something on them, I think. Let's see. I guess it's just a saturation effect on them. Wait, oh I see, there's two. It's got two fills, and one of them's a transform, so they're slightly out of register all in that one path. Anyway, so if I was to look in outline mode, you can see that's what it would look like. Alright, so the next thing, before we make a brush, I just want to look at something here. So if I take, if I draw a shape like this rectangle here, let's make that a fill color, put green. Arrange, send it back. There we go. So, just because you make a brush or a pattern out of something doesn't mean that it's the blending mode's not going to still be there, right? So you can see that these blending modes are still active, and that's part of what makes the design work. But as I covered in another installment, often even though you need that blending mode to get the effect you wanted, then it's a good idea to flatten that transparency. So if I go ahead and select this artwork, go to Object, Flatten Transparency, okay. Now, when I drag this down, you can see that it's been flattened, put in a group flattened, so it stays looking just the way it did with the blending mode, only there's no longer a blending mode on it. And now I can go to my brushes panel, and I can just go ahead and drag it in, say what kind of brush you want. I'm just going to say pattern brush, say OK. So here's the dialog box for that brush. I can give it a name. Here we go. My new flower, right? And you can see right here that they're going to be right tight touching each other, and that's going to be because of the spacing. So this is going to be based on the size of the artwork. So 100% is going to be one piece of artwork, the space of one piece of artwork, and then another piece of artwork. If I say 50%, it's going to be the artwork, half the width of the artwork, and then the artwork again, right? And this size, so remember I said that the 1 point size of your brush would be the same as your original artwork by default. Well, right here I could say if I want 1 point size, stroke size, to be 25% of the original size right there. I can also have it so that it pays attention to the color of your stroke when you're making it. I'm just going to leave that the default none. Then there's stretch to fit, add space to fit, approximate path. I'm just going to leave that alone, say OK. So there's my new brush, which looks a lot like the old one. And I can tell it's a pattern brush because of those little segments. Brushes could be its own lesson, so I'm not going to get too into it. I just want to talk about a few things that we can do with our circular designs now that we've made them. So I can paint them out with a brush. I can go ahead and draw out a path and then apply it to that path. And like I was saying, this 1 point size is now a quarter of the original size. And if I was to increase this point size to, say, 4 points, it would be the same size as the original artwork. Okay, so making brushes, kind of fun thing to do. Now let's take a quick look at patterns. So, just like brushes, this easily can be its own lesson, but I'm just going to cover a couple of basic things here. So taking some of our artwork and making it into patterns, and so you can have them either be in a hex tile or into a square tile, and they don't have to have a back on them, a background color to them. Like if I was to look at this one and have it overlap some stuff. Here, let's bring it to the front. So you can see here that this pattern fill that I have on this rectangle here has no kind of background color. It's transparent in the background. Although it's good to remember that even if your fill doesn't have a background color, you can always go to your appearance panel, select your fill, and just say new is going to duplicate it, or I could just go ahead and say add new fill. Still duplicated it, go figure. And I will just put something in there, right? So it doesn't really matter what. The point is that you can have more than one fill on a path, that you don't have to put the fill or the background fill in your pattern if you don't want to. All right, so let's go ahead and just make a very simple pattern. So I've got these from our first lesson, right? So if I look at these, you can see I still have that hard light filter on them. So unless you want your pattern to have that, I'm going to go ahead and say object, flatten transparency, okie dokie. There we go. Now, just like I dragged the artwork into the brushes panel for a brush, I'm going to drag my artwork into the swatches panel for a pattern. And there's my pattern. That's all there is to it. And I can go ahead here and draw out a shape and choose that pattern that we just made right there. Now, if I want to edit that pattern, I can either double click right there, go into the pattern editor, see it all tiled. I've got some different options here, like size tile to art. That means that if I take my artwork here and I were to scale it down, you can see that it's going to scale the tile with it. If I have move tile with art, if I move it, the tile follows with it. I'm going to undo a few times here. If I uncheck both of those, I can select the stuff, and I can go ahead and I can scale it down. Right. And if I double click off to the side, just like getting out of isolation mode, I can get out of that editor, and I can go ahead and I can grab something else. I can copy it. All right. Where's that pattern? Which way to go? There it is. Okay, I can go into that pattern editor by clicking on the swatch, and then I can paste in my new artwork here. Like that. You can kind of see how it's going to tile out on you. Now, like I was saying, it doesn't have to be a square. It could also be a hexagon. Like that. But we do have to pay attention to the overlap, though. So you can have it overlap, left and front and such. But if you are worried about it, you can also just make sure everything stays within the tile, and then you shouldn't have to worry so much about it. Let's see if I can get that to work out. Not so much. So maybe I'll just shrink this down a little. Okay, so going back to that idea of that background color, remember saying how you can have more than one fill in there? If I was to go ahead and put some sort of background color in here, like this. There we go. You see how it's clipping? It's clipping that artwork that's sticking outside of the tile. I mean, that has to do with how it overlaps, but generally speaking, if you're going to have a solid color, you should really think about keeping all your artwork inside the tile. Okay. Let's do just a little bit more with these patterns. Okay, so another way that works out pretty good sometimes is to start off with something like this. It's a little bit more diagrammatic and just kind of plan out the structure of your pattern a little bit. So if I go ahead and I will just cut those, I suppose, and take these two. So this is a hexagon with just a circle on the inside, and I will just drag that right in to my swatches. Now if I double click, I can see that I'm now in my swatch editor, and I can make this a hex by column so it's all lined up perfectly, right? Make sure that size tile to art is not on when I go and I paste in this, right? Because if I move it outside the tile won't expand, but if this is checked, then it will. So I don't want to do that, so let's undo. And now what I can do is I can just start putting these little circles here, and I can see how they're tiling, right? So if I was to take this and I hold down Option, pull it out there, you can see how it's tiling. So I now have, just by having it on those two, I have it on each corner of my hexagon. This has to do with, this will change depending on how you have your overlap set. And I can take this little center one, the smaller circle, and I can move this here, and I can see how that's going to tile. And I can take this, and I can move it over here. See how that's going to tile. Now, again, if I had a fill here, it would mess up my overlapping. But if I keep the background transparent, then this is going to work all right. So now, if I double-click to get out of here, oops. So if I was to go ahead and grab these guys, copying them, deselect them, then double-click on my swatch pattern here, paste them in, take this, and I will shrink it down and just kind of fill in the blanks. Just do one more pattern here. So if you look at this kind of Cubert looking step pattern, you might not scream circular design to you, but if you look closely at it, it's built on a hexagon. So if I was to draw out a hexagon, so remember with the polygon tool, if you want to add the sides, you can always use the up arrow to increase the number of sides and the down arrow on your keyboard to decrease the number of sides down to a triangle. But we want a hexagon with 6 sides, and I can hold down Shift if I want to constrain proportions. There we go. So I've got a hexagon there. But if I look at this, I can see that I want it rotated. So let's go ahead and rotate it. So with it selected, I will find my rotate tool here, hiding behind my reflect tool, and I can hit return to get that dialog box. Let's see, so if you divide 360 by 6, you're going to get 60. 6 times 6 is 36, right? Let's preview that. But nothing, right? Oh, let's do a little bit more math. How about half of 60 is 30? There we go. So now it's rotated the way I want it, and just say OK. So now what I can do is I can go ahead and draw myself a straight path with a stroke on it. Okay. Well, looks good. Let's select both of these and use our align tools to, hey you. Oh, you know what's going on? If I go to Window, Align, I had my Align tool set to Align to Artboard. I want to Align to Selection. Okay, let's try that again. Oh, much better. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, so now they're all lined up, so they have the same center point. Okay, so let's go ahead and select that line I got, get my rotate tool. Since it's all lined up, center's good, and now we can say, okay, divide 360 by 6, and we got 60. Preview that to make sure it's right. Yes. Let's copy it. Let's do it one more time. Transform them again. Command D. That's it. All right. So now, select all of this. Get your shape builder tool. Again, I've got my colors all set up here in a little color group. And so if I want my light color, I can just go ahead and drag it right there and make that light. And then, let's see, this is going to be my darker one, which is that. And then I'll have this be the kind of more medium value. So once I do that, I should pretty much have my pattern done. I just need to make sure my swatches are showing. Select this, drag it in. Now, by default, it might not look quite right? Because it's going to default to square tiles. But if I go in there so I can see that pattern editor, pattern options, I can change the tile type to hex by row. And that's can try size tile to art. Try to get rid of those annoying little lines, but basically that's it. And so the way this related to circular designs was really just having that open path rotate around to divide up our hexagon, so we could use the shape builder to fill it in and then turn it into a hexagon tile pattern, and then we get our little Cubert style pattern right there. All right, I hope this has been helpful to you, and take care.